Right. Hello, everyone. I'm Coach James Corbett. This is my an interview with Fiona Brannigan. Fiona is a dietitian and nutritionist. We are going to talk about lots of different things today. I've got questions I want to ask her. Um, there are lots of things that I would like to know from a dietitian. So, and I'm sure if I want to know them as a personal trainer, other people will want to know them as well. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first, Fiona?
Yeah, sure. So thanks very much for having me today, James. So I'm a dietitian. I'm Fiona Brannigan. I run my own practice based in Sturton, and I've been running that now for just coming up for 2 years. I very traditional route into my profession. I left school at 17, went off to Robert Gordon's University up in Aberdeen, did my 4 year degree course, which is quite often a surprise for people, is that a dietitian is actually 4 years, honours degree, research project, and then you also have 7 months practical training as part of that as well. So it's actually quite an in-depth course. I'd worked in the NHS exclusively, and then my life circumstances changed a wee bit. I'd cared for my daughter who'd been very unwell with quite a rare condition. She's now fully recovered, living her best life, which is amazing. But something like that changes you. So I decided to leave my senior position in Greater Glasgow and Clyde back in 2022 after being off on basically a kind of sabbatical to care for my daughter. And then my circumstances changed, my marriage ended, so I had to make money. And I thought, how hard can it be? I'm going to go start working for myself, which it's been amazing, and I love it. I absolutely love it, and I love the business side of stuff. But yeah, so that's my story in a nutshell.
What's the what's the difference between a dietist, a dietitian, a nutritionist, and a nutritional therapist?
Yeah, so that's actually something that not really a lot of people realise. So most people come to me because they've searched for nutritionist. So a dietitian is the only person who is regulated, so we're regulated by the state basically, by the Healthcare Professions Council, and it's actually a protected title. So if you were to decide to set yourself up as a dietitian, James, um, you could actually, it's actually against the law. It's actually illegal. Whereas a nutritionist, they are trying to get that a title that's protected, but actually it's a voluntary register. So you could at this point in time call yourself a nutritionist and it would be absolutely fine. So, you could just set yourself up today, nutritionist, and no
And
one's going to
yeah,
stop you.
I can imagine that uh, that is a source of frustration for you professionally because you've been through your 4 year degree, you've done your practical training, you've got all this experience working for NHS and actually working with people, whereas like the thing that I offer when it comes to I don't offer um diet coaching. What I offer to my clients is I have a way of we talk about lifestyle and kind of habits, and part of that is food, but I am very careful. I don't tell them what to eat or when to eat it. I just try and make sure that their habits and their lifestyle are kind of lining up. Whereas I can imagine you have a much more in-depth, rigorous approach.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that would be in my mind. That's what the difference is. Like I'm just kind of offering advice and using my own experience. And I mean, I've got plenty of knowledge about it, but I need to know what my scope of practice is in terms of. I can't say, oh, you have a deficiency in this because you're not eating enough of this type of food. That's just, well, A, probably wrong, and B, uh, it's taking advantage of someone who doesn't know as much as me. And there's a lot of that happens uh, especially in social media. There's a lot of it happens uh, where someone giving advice that's completely unscientifically backed, completely just based on their own experience. And not to say that people's own experiences aren't a valid tool
Hmm.
for them to use, but just because it worked for you doesn't mean you need to start preaching to the masses and telling, oh, I did carnivore diet or I did vegan or I did like, no, like find out what works for you. But actually, if you have a problem and you've tried lots of different things, coming to someone like you is definitely the way to go because you have the training and the experience and you've
Yeah.
worked with people. Would you say it's more people that you work with people who have health conditions, either they have to manage with the food they eat or they maybe have a deficiency or something? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, so it's more people that have health conditions. So we have a similar code of conduct to doctors, basically, to do no harm. That's the other thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, so it's mainly people with health conditions, and actually that's who you should be going to see. You should be going to see a dietitian. You shouldn't be going to see a nutritionist per se. You do get some that are regulated on a voluntary register. Just to go back a wee bit, nutritional therapists tend to come from the more kind of functional medicine. So they do things that are probably, I'm going to be careful what I say here, probably a lot more unorthodox than I would do. So we're very much based in science. And it is people. So just thinking, what's my caseload at the moment? I've got someone with hemochromatosis. I've got a lot of IBS, a lot of bowel issues, and I've also got people with things like high blood pressure, cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, diverticular disease. So it's a lot of gut stuff.
Could you explain the difference between IBS and IBD?
Yeah, sure. So IBS is inflammatory bowel irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah.
IBD is inflammatory bowel disease. So I know I'm not helping here, am I?
I get mixed up about it as well.
So IBS has actually been reclassified as a functional disorder of the gut-brain axis, and I would say that that's probably been the biggest thing that's happened in my career, is beginning to understand the relationship between the brain and the gut. IBD is inflammatory bowel disease, and that incorporates things like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, the kind of most common ones you would see, and also they're actually inflammation within the bowel, and they need to be treated with medicine, basically. So IBS, as it's still commonly referred to, is essentially a condition of exclusion. So basically, people will go to their GP and they will have conditions like any inflammatory bowel diseases excluded. They will have things like celiac disease excluded, and then basically you end up. I think there's a lot of stuff out there that people think irritable bowel syndrome isn't a condition, it's all in their head, and it's far from that. It's a massive thing, and it's just horrible because it absolutely dictates so many people's lives to them. You know, they're planning routes depending on where the nearest toilet is. They're not wanting to leave the house, so they've been to the bathroom that day. They just have, some people can have such a restricted diet because they just cut more and more foods out of the system. And actually that's not great. Having a restricted diet, unless you really need to, is not great for anybody. It's not good for your physical health, and it's not good for your psychological or emotional health either.
So is it very much a case of IBS is, look, we've tested for everything here. We're not quite sure what's going on, but there seems to be a response that your particular makeup has to certain foods, that kind of thing. Okay. How has there been an increase in that over the last wee while? Like, the reason I'm asking that is we have a lot more highly processed food in our diet than we did maybe even 30 years ago, probably certainly 50 or 60 years ago. Has the modern food environment contributed to that, do you think, in your kind of your professional opinion?
I don't know the stats for a start, but my opinion is that no, I think it's our lifestyle altogether. So one of the things that is a cornerstone of managing IBS. So actually you'll hear people talking about a low FODMAP diet. So FODMAPs are types of fermentable carbohydrates. So when they get to your gut, they can cause problems with things like diarrhea and bloating and pain. But actually, before we get to looking at your diet, we're looking at things like your stress levels, your sleep, your exercise. And when I say exercise, I don't mean like going down the gym for an hour every day. I'm talking like moving your body, like getting out for a walk, really simple stuff. And actually we know from science has told us that actually a 12-week course of yoga was actually just as beneficial as a low FODMAP diet. And that was something, as I said to you a minute ago, that's one of the things that we think it's been the biggest change in my career. Because when I started first seeing IBS patients back in, I'm going to get depressed now, 2001, 2002, when I was newly qualified. I worked down in Lancashire. And at that point, the in thing that you did then, the diet for IBS, was a wheat-free diet. And some people did really well on it. And I think there was an element at that point that it just meant they went back to basically eating meat, potato, and 2 veg, because there wasn't the amount of processed foods that there are now, I don't think. And then we understood about the gut-brain axis, and we began to understand about these fermentable carbohydrates. And so I don't think it's per se what we're eating. I think it's a combination of lots of different things, and that's what makes it such an interesting condition, because you can have people coming in with the same symptoms but get managed very, very differently.
Yeah, these things are always multifactorial. Whenever I've got a client who is coming to see me in the gym and we're having to troubleshoot their progress, maybe they're not making the progress I think they should be, or that they want to have. A lot of that comes down to managing expectations, having a conversation around that, realizing this is a long-term process. It's not going to be, you can't undo 10 years of bad habits in three months. It may take 10 years to get the reverse out of where you were. I think that the multifactorial nature of diet is that we are not as active as we used to be. We are certainly consuming a lot more, or are we consuming less like fresh food? Is there data to prove that? It certainly seems to be my experience when I track people's food for a week. So I'll do so if someone's really struggling, the first thing I'll do with them is a food diary for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And the tricky thing with that is you've got to tell them, look, don't change anything, because they automatically start, oh well, someone's looking at this now, so I've got to be perfect. And then I look at it for a week and I go, like, there doesn't seem to be any issues here. Like, this all seems pretty good. You're getting fruit and veg, you're getting lean meats, you're having good sources of carbohydrates. Oh yeah, I needed to clean up my diet because you were going to be looking at it. So that's the first conversation I have with them. But the point you made about a course of yoga being as effective as medicine is the fact that exercise is medicine in real terms. But the ability for people to realize that and actually start planning for their future. And when you're 25, it doesn't, like, you don't think about the future. You don't really. But when you're starting to get into your mid-30s, 40s, this is when it starts to become something you need to think about. Your body isn't as resilient as it used to be. I feel like I've got like a halo here right now. I'm on my soap.
Do you know you actually do? It's quite funny.
Like that, yeah. Not that, yeah. So like this is something people need to start thinking about. They need to start planning for the rest of their life earlier, probably, than they think they need to. And I know, like, and that involves like making sure you have a pension, making sure you have all your finances in check, making sure you're not going to live out with your means. And that also comes down to people's physical existence as well. Is there a correlation between what are you seeing? You're seeing a lot of people with IBS at like stuff like that. Is that mainly what you're focused on just now?
Yeah, it probably is. It's the majority of my caseload, and I think that goes back to people will pay. So in the UK, we're used to having free healthcare. So it's actually a challenge in a country where there's free healthcare, getting people to buy into healthcare. What you get by coming privately, you get more time for a start. You get a lot more time, but you also get seen quicker. And actually, people have to be, and that's why things like podiatrists and chiropodists do really well in the private sector, or podiatrists are now, as that's me being old school, because people are in pain. They're actually in physical pain. And I think
Yeah.
also there's also, post-menopause for women. So I kind of specialise in over 50s. That's my background. Post-menopause, the gut microbiome changes, and women do tend to get altered bowel habits at that point, and that comes with an extra level of, people that automatically think the worst. They think they've got something quite sinister going on. So, and then they're left with this thing of, oh, you're fine, normal. And they're sitting there going, no, no, I'm absolutely not normal, because this is not a normal life for me, having to, take something to make me go, or something to make me stop, or all those things. I think going back to the question, I very much notice in terms of the social listening that I do, there seems to be a change. I think people are cooking less. And it used to be people, if they wanted to lose weight, and we've spoken about this before, they wanted to lose weight, they would be looking for, whether it was Weight Watchers or Slimming World or Scottish Slimmers or whatever. Whereas now they're actually looking for people to make their food for them. Sometimes it feels like people are beginning to kind of just give out all responsibility. And that comes down to I think that's a lot of trust issues in your own body. I think that's a lot of stuff to do with diet culture that a lot of people have grown up with, that they can't trust their bodies. If you nourish your body properly and you listen to it, it actually gives you a lot of information.
Mm-hmm. It's like I had a client come to me years ago who had been on the Cambridge diet, and I've had brushes with the Cambridge diets in the period since, whether that's through people that I know, or like people becoming Cambridge diet consultants or something along those lines. But the the overwhelming drawback of such a system is being that you have to stay on that system for the rest of your life, and it doesn't actually teach you anything about how to look after and nourish your own body. And all that happens is they lose the weight, they get down to the weight they want to be, whether that's right or wrong, or like it's just your, like, and this is another thing for women, is like the number on your scale is simply your relationship with gravity. Like, you can go to Mars and you'll be 2/3 the weight you are on Earth. It doesn't, like, it's just a number on the scale. So they get down to whatever weight they want it to be, and then they go, oh, completed it. It's like, well, actually, that's the completely wrong mindset to have about health and fitness. You don't complete health and fitness. It's something you've got to consider in some fashion for the whole of your life. It's not something now, and I think that's a really bad flaw of the fitness industry, is we very much idolize things like bodybuilders, people who are peaking for a particular day, and then we use that as a bastion of health, and it's really not. I mean, I bash on bodybuilders quite a lot, like, but I do have an enormous amount of respect for them. It's not something I would ever want to do, but it's the discipline and they have to get there, because they're basically fighting against their body the whole way down to become very low fat body fat percentages. And what do? The same thing that happens after a Cambridge diet. They rebound back out of it, and they possibly end up being going from unhealthy in one fashion to unhealthy in another fashion, where they're doing all sorts of things to their body that it's not meant to do. It's a weird thing to have to talk to people about, because they go to a personal trainer and they think that you're going to get them a six pack, or they think I'm going to get them a six pack, and I was like, okay, well, you're 40 pounds overweight, like that we got to get that down to maybe being let's try at least like £10 at a time rather than thinking about being £40 underweight with a six pack. The expectation that I have to put onto them is, look, there's so many things at play with your health and your fitness beyond your control that actually that stuff isn't really worth worrying about. You need to worry about what you can control. And you can control your attendance at the gym. You can control how prepared you are for meals. You can control what is the environment in your house. Like that's a conversation I have with clients quite a lot, is make the good choices easy and make the not so good choices hard. Is that something that you like? Do you talk to your clients about food environment? Do you talk to them about that?
Yeah, yeah, I do, because it's difficult. If you've got the bar of chocolate there, you're more likely to, and you're feeling a little bit tired, you're more likely to eat it. But I think also it comes back to, what happens at supper, at 9 o'clock at night actually starts at breakfast time in the morning. And there's so many people, and I'm going to say women because it's mainly women that I work with. That's where my experience lies, is that they are so, I'm going to use these words, good during the day. They eat so little that by the time they maybe get in from their work and they've got to get a dinner, meal on the table, they've got homework to do, they've got clubs to go to, they've got children to get places and do things, and then they sit down at 9 o'clock at night and they're like, oh, this is my time. And because they've actually not nourished their body, and I'm a big fan of the word nourishing your body and fueling it properly, that's when things can get a wee bit more tricky. So that's better.
Right,
You've lost your halo now, though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was like, I lost it a long time ago.
It's such a horrible narrative that women have, and I think especially when you get to, I'm 45, so I've grown up through the supermodels and the waifs, and it was just, women were meant to be small. The smaller you could be, the lighter you could be, the smaller your clothes size was better. It was some kind of weird screwed up narrative, and actually now we're trying to get women to not, not go for a beach body or a little black dress body, to go for an old lady body, so that you've actually got a body that's going to keep you fit and active so you can enjoy your retirement. Because you said a wee minute ago, about we plan for the future, we plan financially for the future. We have these great plans of retirement, of going on cruises and lying on the beach, or going visiting countries or cities or whatever, or being the front grandparent. But actually, you need a body that's going to keep up with you. And that starts, it can start at any point, but there comes a point when that boat has sailed as well.
The best day to start training, like in terms of what I do, start strength training, was yesterday. That's the best day to start. And if you haven't started yesterday, start today, because 55 to especially like a female 55 to 75, even like actually men 55 to 75, they're starting to slow down a bit. They're starting to be a lot maybe not feel as, especially men. Interesting thing happened last night. So like I live on a farm, so we've got a basically like a kind of a thing you put the straw in for the cows. So it's like a big oh God, what's the heck is the Scottish word for it. I don't know.
I was going to say, I would describe it as a hay heck.
Yeah, aye. A hay heck, as they would call it in Ayrshire. And it had blown over in the storm. And my dad came in last night after it was dark, mind you, and said, James, will you go up the field and help me lift this heck up, because I can't get it. Now, my dad's about to turn 70 in April. I was like, well, first of all, I was like, Dad, do you not have told me this earlier when it was light and we could have just went up the field and did it? And I was annoyed about that, and I was like, okay, right, I'll come and help you. And I said, where is it? Because I'm not like, I don't take much to do with the farm, to be honest, because I'm just so bit. I'll help my dad when he needs help, but I've got so much going on I don't really have much time for it. They said, oh, it's up the top field. So I went up the top field, and I was up there before and it was on its side. So I just lifted it, pushed it up, got underneath it, lifted it up. When that was it, it was fine. Went back down the field. Then I met my dad coming up the field as I was going back down. He went, "Oh, did you lift?" And I was like, "Yeah, I lifted it." And he was like, "Well, I couldn't move it." And I'm like, "Okay, that that so like, I mean, maybe 10 years ago my dad would have done that no problem, 60, but he's definitely starting to." And he actually said to me, "My God, you must be strong." And I was like, "Well, there's something to lifting weights, Dad. Like, it's when you can deadlift twice your body weight, everything else kind of seems easy after that. Like, there's not really much in terms of physical challenges that I come across day to day when I go, oh, I don't think I can do that. But in terms of like strength, but my point is that when we reach a certain age, a lot of people think it can be hopeless. Oh, and I'm never going to come back. And I want to get the mentality into people that it's never too late to start training. I would say maybe the only caveat to that would be something like Alzheimer's or dementia. If you just don't, if as a person you're just losing your cognizance and your ability to rationally make decisions, as long as you've still got your mind, you can still train, because you can make the informed decision to say, I'm going to lift this weights. Whereas, like, if you're trying to cajole and convince someone who's just not there anymore to try and lift a weight, that's just tantamount to abuse. And at that point I would say it's probably too late. But
so can I ask you a question, James?
yeah,
My understanding,
yeah.
not the word understanding in that, is that
Yeah.
you can actually still increase your muscle mass up to the age of 85. Do you know anything? Do you get any more? That's what I was always led to believe from my physio
I mean,
colleagues.
I couldn't quote you any studies or anything, but in my personal experience, if you're not adapting, if you don't have the ability to adapt, then you're dying. So that's the thing. So the body, human beings are remarkable creatures. Our ability to adapt to any stimulus that doesn't kill us, basically, obviously, like lighting yourself on fire isn't a useful stimulus, but doing a hard workout is a useful stimulus, and you will get better with that. Now, what qualifies as hard or strenuous is very individual to each person. Like, what's going to be hard for an 85-year-old person is going to be ridiculously easy. Like, is going to be ridiculously easy for a 25-year-old person. Like,
Yeah.
Give or take. Like, I mean, if you're 25 with cerebral palsy or something, that might be a different situation. But like the stimulus that you adapt to needs to be appropriate. But I mean, in terms of adding muscle mass, the thing that comes with age, and you'll probably know more about this, is you become less efficient at utilizing dietary protein. So an interesting thing that or thought experiment that I sometimes get my clients to go through is, right, who needs more protein? If they're both people are working out, who needs more protein? A 65-year-old man or a 25-year-old man? Who needs more protein? And they'll be like, oh yeah, the 25-year-old, he'll need more protein. It's like, no, actually it's the 65-year-old who needs more protein, because the machinery in his body that actually digests and has just become less efficient. So he needs a bigger dose to get the same response from that. And the same comes with lifting weights as well. 25-year-old just needs to like sniff a barbell and they'll get stronger. Whereas like a 65-year-old might need to put in a lot of work to get the same amount of change in their relative strength. So the importance of realizing that it's not hopeless and you can start today, even if you feel like you're a bit over the hill. And that so many conversations I have with people who's like, oh, I need to get in shape before I start coming to see you. And I was like, well, my job's kind of redundant at that point. If you're not like, if you're in shape before you come and see me, then you've done it yourself. Like you didn't need me. So what's stopping you doing that? And that's where my job comes in, and that's where I'd say probably less than half of my job is like actually teaching people how to lift. Like it's a big part, probably most of my job, but it's not more than half my job. I would say like the lifestyle, being consistent, helping people to make health and fitness a priority for them is very much part of my job, and that's a big, all those little bits chunk up to be probably just as much work as actually.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things is the consistency. It's consistency, and it's also acknowledging that for some people, life is tricky, especially, if you are an older, if you are in your kind of 50s or 60s, that life can be difficult because you're still working. You've potentially got kind of teenage or adult children. You've maybe got grandchildren you want to look after. Then you're all living longer, so you've got elderly parents. There's a huge amount on that, but actually doing small things on a regular basis, it really adds up. And one of the big issues that I deal with a lot of my clients is that all or nothing mindset. They'll hammer something. They'll be or they've had a diagnosis. So for example, like a diagnosis of type 2, and they're going to go ultra low carb, and they're going to do this and do that and do that. And I'm the one that's there kind of trying to temper the reins, kind of going, well, yeah, that's fine. And you say that now, but see when we meet again in a month, that's potentially not gonna, it's going to be hard to sustain. And things have to be sustainable. So if you can only get to the gym and do your strength training once a week, it's still better than, than trying to be there every day for a week and then not going back again. It's my take on it. I don't know how you feel about
that. No, 100%. I would rather you did something than did nothing. And it comes down to a lot of life circumstances. When things are going well, I mean, the recommendation I make for 90% of people is lifting weights 3 times a week and doing a full body session. So squats, deadlifts, bench presses, overhead presses, chin-ups if they can do them, lat pull. Like we're kind of getting into the weeds a bit there, but what we want to do is stimulate the whole body, allow the body to recover, and then put the weights up a little bit. And then that can be that how much we put the weight up is very dependent on each person. But that heating the whole body as a system is something that I really try and emphasize with my clients. It's not arm day or chest day or leg day or there is if someone's a bit more advanced and they're wanting to really commit to lifting weights, so that might be somebody who's maybe want to train for a powerlifting competition or something like that. It's a very specific goal. I might have them do a more specific workout regimen. But for people who are just training to be generally fit and generally strong, 3 days a week is absolutely perfect for years. Going into a more focused routine, shall we say? But I'll not get into those. That's something probably we can talk about at another time. But it's having them be consistent with whatever they're doing, and that might just be for now. Okay, so the next 3 months, you're moving house, you're starting a new job, your partner's pregnant if it's a guy, or the female might be pregnant if it's like, okay, we really need to watch what we're doing here. Life circumstances change. So if you can just do once a week for that period of time, you're going to be actually probably like coming out the end of that, probably ahead of where you would be if you'd done well. You're definitely going to be ahead of where you'd be if you'd done nothing, but you're also not putting that pressure on yourself to be perfect. This can be a personality type that comes up quite often in people who seek personal trainers, is they want to make sure they're doing everything like perfectly all the time. And I can imagine people maybe coming to see you, they want to be optimized or have the perfect routine or whatever. It's okay, well, when we can work towards that, that might be something, but you have to then have a conversation about expectations and say, like, there's like 12 different steps between there and where you are now and there. If we can get halfway there, that's a lot of people would see that as a failure. Or I didn't get to my goal. Actually, you got closer to your goal than you were when you started. That's an individual kind of mindset with people that you have to have a conversation with them about, and just getting them to realize that if they just do the right things and just control what they can control and not actually worry about the outcome too much, then usually things get better as they go through things. And I can imagine that when you're talking to your clients, you're trying to get them to go through that process as well and say, right, this is the thing I'm focusing on with Fiona this month.
Mhm.
This is the thing, right? Oh, what about next month? Don't worry about next month. Fix this thing first. Get that thing solidified. Get that thing in your routine. Be the person that does that thing, and then it becomes automatic, and you can move on to the next.
Yeah,
You can move on to
absolutely.
the next thing, and it's just those little iterations that I try and emphasize with them.
Yeah, and I think also, you said about managing expectations. People nowadays are just looking for quicker and quicker fixes. I feel that they're not. Yeah, there's something, and I don't know if it's. I think it could be a societal thing. I mean, you can order stuff off Amazon, it comes the next day. You can swipe left.
The frog in the boiling pot of water. So if you boil a pot of water and you try and throw a frog in it, it's just going to jump straight out. But if you put a frog in a pan of cold water and boil it up, the frog dies. Now, whether that's actually true or not, I don't know. I'm not going to boil a frog to find out. So the the point is that we get used to our circumstances, and this can be a detriment and a like we can like I have clients who come to me with back pain, and actually they can't really remember the last time their back wasn't sore.
Mhm, mhm.
And that's a conversation I have with them. And they just kind of think that's the way life is. Like, well, that's just life. My back's just sore. Like it's not stopping them going to work. It's maybe not stopping them like going to the pub. It's not stopping them like financially earning more money at their job or something like that. But it's just this low kind of, and maybe have a more severe flare up every now and again. And I'm assuming like the way I'm describing that is probably very similar to like something like IBS. Is like there'll be periods where it's fine, and then there'll be this flare up, and then we've got to talk about stress. We've got to talk about exercise. We've got to talk about basically all the same conversations that you have with your clients,
Mhm.
and then they train with me for 5 or 6 weeks, and their back isn't sore anymore. And that's probably where it differs from IBS, because it's not like back pain can be pretty clean cut like that sometimes. Although
Uh-huh.
sometimes there's other times it's not. There are lots of underlying things that can be causing back pain, but if you can show someone how much better their life can be in a short, like a big improvement, maybe not all the way where they want to go, but a big improvement in a very short period of time, you get a lot of buy-in from them.
Uh-huh.
And the problem I think with internet, and I think a lot of your point about Amazon, uh, everything's very immediate nowadays, and that's great for convenience. It's great for like, oh God, I need that thing, and you click on Amazon, and sometimes it's there the next day. I think some places in America it comes within hours, and you're just like, okay, like this is unparalleled levels of convenience through the whole of human history. Like, if you wanted something, even like 100 years ago, if you wanted something, you probably had to save up for it, force someone to make it for you. Then there was like a week time of leads, or a lead time of weeks or possibly months to get the thing you want. So there wasn't that immediate gratification, and I think you are right. I think that possibly has bled over into how we treat ourselves. Oh, there should be a pill, or there should be a thing I can buy that does something to me that immediately fixes the problem. But unfortunately, that's not how the body works. That's not how life works in general. We've got to work hard, and that's one of the biggest kind of. I like to talk about meta narratives, and I think lifting weights, one of the biggest things it teaches you is delayed gratification. I'm doing a really hard thing now, and it's a bit uncomfortable, and I'm breathing heavy and I'm sweating a bit, and for people who have never really done anything physical for a long time, that can actually be pretty daunting. But it's a really good way for them to challenge themselves in a very safe but productive environment. So I think you're 100% right. I think people, and that came like earlier on, you touched on like kind of like meal prep services and things like that. I think unless you're unless you're like a CEO of a multi-million-pound company where your time and people depend on your time, so like your time is so valuable, I think you should probably be cooking most of your own meals. There's an argument to be made for like my time is worth $500 or £500 an hour. It's worth me paying someone to do my meals for me because I get the rub of the green is more, but that's a different argument. That's someone
it's
that's
a bit
not
of a
someone
different
who's
argument. Uh-huh.
that's probably someone who's like very well organized, very high performing, probably knows how to cook their own meals, but just simply the time constraints, like they could use that time to spend with their family or do more work or like visit their parents or something like that. But that's a different argument. But I think the delayed gratification aspect of life isn't there anymore. And I'm not saying I'm not a saint. There's things that I do that I know are bad habits. What are you seeing in changes in people as they age in terms of their dietary requirements? Because we seem to be focusing on kind of older people right now. So let's talk a bit more about that.
So the thing is, once you hit 65, your nutritional requirements change. And that's not something that's particularly spoken about. It's not out there, and even doctors don't get me started on doctors' nutrition. That's another subject for another day. But
I have the same feelings as doctors about exercise. Or don't lift anything heavier than a bag of sugar. I just like slap them. Just be like, hey, you don't know what you're talking. They know way more than I do about a lot of things. But I think sometimes the problem with doctors is because they know a lot about medicine, they think they know a lot about everything. And
have you heard the joke?
Sorry to any doctors.
Right. Have you heard the joke though? What's the difference between God and a doctor?
No, I don't know.
No, God knows he's not a doctor. So,
and
apologies again for any doctors out there, but that's a common one in hospitals amongst other staff that aren't medics. But so essentially, as you get older, you do need more protein. Although the other part of that is, as a country as a whole, we tend not to be protein deficient. That's not something I'm going to go out on a limb here, and the wellness industry has really pushed protein big time. And when you begin pushing a certain food group, what happens is people begin cutting down other food groups. And that's another topic of conversation. But yeah, you need more protein. In terms of your muscle composition, the three things that are important as you get older in muscle composition is protein, omega-3s, and also vitamin D. And you need those in your diet. So you need to be having your fish twice a week, at least one of them's oily. You also need more calcium, and you actually need quite a chunk more calcium than you do. So at the moment, we're saying you should be having kind of 3 portions of calcium-rich foods a day. So that's like 125 ml of yogurt, a third of a pint of milk, a matchbox-sized piece of cheese. When you get older, you need to add in another one. So you're actually increasing it by a third. And those
like
are the main things.
Matchbox.
A small
matchbox.
Yeah, we're not talking about the kitchen size.
Cheese that size. So, yeah.
So it's about 30 grams in weight, roughly. And also, you're more likely to become deficient in folate and vitamin B12 as you get older. Your body doesn't absorb them quite so well because the gut changes. It doesn't repair itself just as quickly as it did. Just like, any system in the body, is going to, get issues with longevity and aging. And there's also the element of genetics that's involved in that as well. There's things that we can't outrun. But one of the issues that you quite often see with older adults, and I'm talking potentially when people are getting into their 70s and 80s, they're just not physically fit enough to be able to do so. They will have things like, toast and jam for their tea and things like that. They're just not physically able to either make the meals, or there could be psychological issues going on there. There could be emotional things. Food, especially for people that have had like families and then they've ended up on their own. It can be really difficult to get them to try and engage again. And that's, we use things like, pierce and ping. If that's your thing and it's going to get you some nutrition, then we can look around other things in your diet, adding in frozen vegetables, tinned fruit, these kind of things. It doesn't need to be difficult as you get older. Looking at batch cooking and things like that. Slow cookers. I love my slow cooker. Big fan of slow cookers.
That just circles back around to the point where I think we were both making earlier, where the habits and the routines and stuff you learn when you're younger, it's like the tail of there will be a decline. There will be. You're gonna lose muscle mass, you're gonna lose bone density, you're gonna lose mental clarity as you get older, but that tail becomes much shallower, and you have a good quality of life for a lot longer if you're fit and healthy and you're able to do those things. But I mean, also the point you made about genetics is the way I try and think about your genetics, or like your parents basically, is genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger to a certain extent. Obviously, like there's no absolutes in all this stuff, but if you come from a family history of like heart disease, diabetes, alcoholism, because there is a large genetic component to all these things, your choices are informing the outcome that's going to happen. And if you make good choices, the likelihood of a bad outcome happening reduces. I'm not saying it goes to zero, because you can't control everything about genetics. My mum's dad died of a heart attack when he was like in his 40s. So I have a family history of heart conditions. My uncle's got heart conditions. So like a part of the really big motivating factor for me staying fit and healthy is the fact that I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to not be on medication from 50 years old. Yeah, so like the way that you can structure your life, and a lot of people I think just like sometimes, I've got bad knees, or my dad had bad knees, or my mum had bad knees. I was like, okay, well, I'm like, you done anything about it? Is there something? I think people are resigned to the fact that that's just the way the things they are. But the main the main thing I think for older people, I think, is things that help their bone density and their muscle mass. So preventing sarcopenia and preventing osteopenia as much as you can. But like if you're 65 and you're a 65-year-old woman and you're deadlifting 60 kilograms, your bone density is probably going to be pretty good. I mean, like my mum's just turned 70 last week and she hasn't lifted weights for a wee while, but when she was doing it, she was deadlifting 70 kilos. She was like squatting between 40 and 50, and she was bench pressing like 30 to 40, and overhead pressing like in the mid 20s. So like the dose that she got from that has actually helped her tremendously. Like my mum was my first ever client, like God, like 8 years ago now. Like client. She basically was my guinea pig to me to start like coaching people. And when I first took her to the gym, she couldn't do a body weight squat. Like she could go about halfway down, but you couldn't get all the way down. So we got a nice big stretch in the muscle. We get like a good load. We get into the hips. We start to treat the body as a whole system. So I had to figure a way out of getting her down. Basically, set up boxes, and every session she come in, we moved the boxes down a little bit, and eventually she got to the place where she was squatting with her body weight below, like to parallel. Is a big standard for most people, but she couldn't enjoy her walks with her. Like she didn't enjoy going to the gym, but what she enjoyed was going on her walks with her friends. Yeah, so my mum was having issues completing her like walks with her friends, and there was a period of weeks where she was like hobbling by the end of the walk, and like people were. I think there was even one occasions where someone had to walk ahead, get their car, come back and pick her up at the side of the road because she couldn't walk anymore because she was having really bad knee pain. And when she started lifting weights, the knee pain went away because she got stronger. She got through that process of being stronger and being a more capable human being, because her knee pain was so sore, so severe, she couldn't keep going on. But then she started training with me, and I got her to, and within a few weeks, her knee pain went away. Like it was quite remarkable. I think she was quite shocked, actually.
Yeah, so that's something that I think is actually really important, is because people, and I'm not a physio and I'm not a PT, but so often that I've been out. So when I worked in the NHS, I worked in a team with physios and OTs, and we used to go out and do joint visits and things together. And the physio always used to say to them, walking does not make you stronger. And everyone was like, rubbish. And actually, I think that just illustrates that point so well. You know, my mum's a new hip operation. She's got a new hip in the summer, and I'm always rabbiting on at her about doing her exercises to strengthen that muscle. You know, and it's so important, I think, for older people, is to think, oh, I can walk and it's fine. They don't actually appreciate the strength. They need strength there. They need to do strengthening exercises. They need to do balancing exercises. They need to work on their core. They need to do all of these kind of things to keep all of them working.
But I think of a good analogy. It's like having an emergency fund. So being strong is like having 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting there in case something goes wrong. That's what strength is for. It's in case something goes wrong. Because walking around, it will be easier if you're stronger, for a start. And secondly, it's not the stimulus that your body gets from walking is not of a great enough magnitude that actually helps to make your body a stronger organism. It's just ambulatory. Like it just gets you from A to B. It's a functional thing. It's not a thing that's going to make you adapt. It has to be pretty hard, and you can't make walking hard. You can walk faster, but how do you walk faster? if you're already, and your mum's maybe like, take your mum for example, she just had her hip operation, like the fastest she can walk is maybe like a slight shuffle, like to this court, like if she's even leaving the house at all, it might just be a slight shuffle just around the house. How do you make that progressively harder over time to get a response that the body actually adapts to? You can't. And there may be an argument to say that if someone is so detrained, actually walking 10 meters might be really, really hard for them, and that actually may meet the threshold for it to be a stimulus to get them stronger. But how long is that going to last for? That might last for like a couple of weeks, maybe, if they do it every day. But then after that, well, they've got to start like pushing a heavy sled. They've got to start pushing a resistance against something. So like a sled is fantastic for an older person because it's a very safe way to load pushing and moving through space. Actually, you might, and I would argue like a sled is probably the best way to do that for an older person. The problem being access to proper equipment, access to space, access to like there's a load of things that make it a bit impractical. Whereas actually them doing what you would call like a sit to stand test, which is I can't remember if it's 30 seconds or 60 seconds, but if they've got to do 10 of those in the time, I can't remember. I think it might be 60
usually
seconds.
10 they've got to do. You usually time them to see where it goes.
Them.
Yeah.
And I think the threshold, like 30 seconds is good, 60 seconds is okay, but if it's taking you longer than 60 seconds or you can't even complete 10, that's a severe deficiency in just your muscular strength. So that's quite a good test for older people. Like if anyone's watching this and they're worried about their parents, go and ask them to do a sit to stand test. It doesn't happen very often. So
I have got a 43-page free guide which focuses on nutrition over 65, and it covers things from what you're needing to improve your muscle strength. It looks at incorporating fun foods because actually life's quite important for that. It's got a little menu plan in there, kind of days intake, talks about some supplements you might want to be looking at taking. Everyone should be taking vitamin D from the months of kind of, they say May to September. We live in Scotland. I kind of do April to October, but actually people are housebound. They should be having it all year round. It is only 400 IUs. You don't need these whacking doses. You don't need the ones that have got vitamin K in them. I don't know where that rumour started. You've got to vitamin K with it. So yeah, that's there. And I think, James, you're very kindly going to post a link for me, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll put the link to that below in the description. So if you've enjoyed what Fiona's said today, you want to know more about her, visit our website. I'll put the link down for her guide below, and we'll do this again, perhaps on a more stable internet connection. Elon Musk's getting in the way of us giving out good advice. Yeah, but we'll do another one, have a bit more chat about things. What I'd love to do, and what I do with a lot of my guests, is I try and get them to come and meet me in the gym, especially if they live in the west of Scotland, because it's like, obviously if I'm talking to somebody in London or something, it's a bit of a trek. And I teach them how to do some things in the gym, maybe some things they weren't aware of, give them a bit of coaching in terms of their squats or their deadlifts or their whatever they want to do. So if you're up for that, I'd be more than happy to do that. Just let me know and we'll organise that, okay?
Yeah, no, that would be great. And I think it's actually something, it's Confessions of a Dietitian. It's something, because talking about life's got in the way, but it's something that I try and get people to do, but it's something that I need to start doing for myself. I need to start preparing in a physical sense for my old lady body. So I'll absolutely take you up on that, James.
Okay, perfect. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll speak to you later, having a chat with me, and we'll get that organised just shortly. Okay.
Right. Okay. Great. See ya.